I'm Roby Brock, and welcome to our Talk Politics podcast. We're back after a brief summer vacation here. I'm joined by Jessica DeLoach. Sabin, as always, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's move right through this and talk about our big story of the week in politics. I got one, you got one. I'm going to let you go first.
Great. My big story of the week concerns Fayetteville, Arkansas. So as you know, Fayetteville was the first city in Arkansas to pass a non-discrimination ordinance that also protected people's sexual orientation. Mm-hmm. In December of 2014, that ordinance was overturned because there was a massive PR movement by the religious right, and it was defeated or overturned. Well, now, this week, we've seen things go back in the other direction, and the voters in Fayetteville have decided that they do want this ordinance. They turned out, and basically the numbers flip-flopped. I think it was 53-47.
Pretty close to that, the unofficial count. Yeah.
Unofficially, so which is just like the flip-flop of the last numbers in December. And so now we have a non-discrimination ordinance in Fayetteville, and we're already hearing about rumblings of a legal challenge regarding this passage, but I don't know where that's going to go.
And there's some other cities in the state that have done something very similar too.
Correct.
So this could be maybe something part of a bigger legal issue there. All right, my big story of the week, Connor Eldridge, former U.S. attorney in the Western District, Democrat, says he is going to challenge John Boozman for the U.S. Senate in 2016. He came out, he talked about some changes he wants to make to Obamacare, at least in theory, some general topics there. He's against the Iran deal. Some Democrats have complained he's Republican light or Boozman light. Some Republicans are already tying him to President Obama, who nominated him for the U.S. District Attorney post. I think it's incumbent upon Connor Eldridge to distinguish himself in this race and find an issue that he may try to tag on to if he's going to give John Boozman a run, because he's starting from almost ground zero. Can he tap into the anti-incumbent sentiment that's out there? John Boozman's been there for 15 years. He still has the D after his name, which is a liability in Arkansas politics right now. I think he's a long shot at this point in time.
I think that he is also a long shot, and part of the reason why is because the Democrats here in the state of Arkansas seem to be figuring out what their identity is. And so if you are already right out of the gate being accused of being a bit more conservative than you should be, running as a Democrat, that's not going to do you any favors, because one thing that we've learned, and we've seen this in races all across the United States, it's really hard to run as a Democrat and yet run very much as a conservative and expect your voter base to turn out for you. You have to energize them. You have to give them a reason to show up. And if you start out with that kind of accusation, it's going to be a little hard on the front end.
And I think the other question too is how energized is the non-conservative Democratic base in Arkansas? Do they make up enough numbers that they could carry you in a general election? I think the answer to that is no. You have to appeal to those independents in the middle. So tough juggling act at this point in time. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a quick break. I'm going to come back with 4 minutes, 4 questions. You got 2 questions for me?
I do.
I got 2 questions for you.
Great.
We're back right after this. All right, back with our Talk Politics podcast. I'm with Jessica DeLoach. Sabin, 4 minutes, 4 questions. Yeah. You got to be quick on these, all right?
Okay.
I'm asking the first question, and then you get the second one. First question, we came out with some new polling recently. Medical marijuana, 84% supported if it's physician prescribed for medical purposes. Those numbers change dramatically if you add some other caveats on there. So my question to you is, will we see a marijuana legalization proposal on the ballot in 2016, and if so, will it pass?
I think that that's entirely possible. Obviously, it comes down to the wording. It comes down to what exactly you're trying to pass. What we've seen based on the recent poll numbers that Talk Business and Politics had released was that if it is just solely between a patient and a doctor being able to prescribe that to a patient, then it passes, no question. But there are people who in the state who are very supportive of that, but they're also supportive of taking these issues a little bit further. And one of the things we've heard about is a move to allow people who live, I believe, 20 miles away from a place where they could receive that substance to be able to grow it themselves. Mm-hmm. And once that's introduced, what we've seen in the poll numbers is that the support declines significantly, enough to where it probably definitely won't pass. So it really depends on the wording, and it depends on how that community of people can come to an agreement about what they want to have on the ballot.
Yep. And just pure legalization for any purpose, including recreational, doesn't seem to fare as well, at least in the polling numbers, if people are being honest. All right, question is yours.
Okay, so President Obama has stated that the United States will accept 10,000 Syrian refugees in the next year So how do you think this will be received by the American people?
Poorly, I think. So I just think that the whole issue of immigration is such a controversial, hot button issue right now. And you're talking about refugees from the Middle East, which is a hotbed of terrorism.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that any of these refugees are in that category, but there is going to be the public perception out there that this is a liberal move by President Obama, and that this is a wrong move by President Obama from his detractors, and I think maybe even from some independents who will be a little scared or skeptical about the whole motivation there. We're seeing these refugees, though, being taken in by countries all over the world.
That's right.
I mean, Canada included, Europe, other Middle Eastern countries. But I think that the reception is going to be hesitant or received poorly.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
All right. My last question for you is the Governor Asa Hutchinson has set execution dates for 8 people on death row. 2 a month, I think, starting in October through January, double executions on singular days there. My question to you is, will they be carried out? We hadn't had one in 10 years.
Right. Well, I will say that I would be surprised if they're not carried out, because now what we know is that the greatest legal roadblock that has been thrown up has now been removed. So it would really, the challenge lies on the behalf of the people who are working to advocate against the death penalty in the state of Arkansas, and now they've got to come up with an even stronger argument to possibly put these to a halt or just postpone them. But what we know is that we have a legislature that is basically, majority speaking, fully ready to move forward with this, and then a governor who campaigned and even said where he stood on this, and an attorney general who feels the exact same way. So this is just, but it's not a partisan issue, because as you know, in the past we've had Democratic governors who have carried out executions in the state. So it's not a partisan issue, but I would definitely be surprised if these don't happen.
And I think that we will see on like execution night, I think that we will be going up till almost some 11th hour with some of the legal appeals on this. So
Absolutely.
I think they'll let everybody be prepped and ready for them, and there may be a little curveball thrown in, and then we may see final answer.
Right.
All right, last question is yours.
Okay, so as you probably know, our Kansan, who is running for the GOP's nomination to run for president, Mike Huckabee, he recently took a very firm stand with a Kentucky county clerk who was jailed for refusing to issue marriage licenses. She was released from jail. There was a big press conference. I believe she walked out to Eye of the Tiger, and he was right there by her side. Also present, though, was our Texas Senator Ted Cruz. And Huckabee has accused Cruz of showing up and trying to take over this event. What do you think that's all about?
Trying to crash his party.
He's crashing his party.
This was a rally that was put together by the Huckabee campaign. They secured the permits and the venue for it, and this has kind of been, for the last week, this has been his big, stump speech, is
Right.
that she's allowed to stand up for her religious freedom and shouldn't be jailed. And so I think Cruz showing up there at the last minute, you saw the Huckabee folks putting the blockade up on
Right.
him. And but I mean, look, they did the work. He was going to show up and try to take the girl home at the end of the night, for lack of a better analogy, And I think Huckabee was probably within his bounds to say, this is our event right here. You can stand out in the crowd with the rest of them if you want to, but I did all the work to make this happen, and I'm not going to let you weasel in on my on my popularity or my media
Right.
success on this. So we'll see. I think we'll see more Huckabee Cruz skirmishes coming up. I think they are fighting for the same piece of the primary vote in terms of the evangelicals. They both appeal to that base of the Republican Party, and I think that you'll see more between Cruz and Huckabee. And this only helps in that. So
Yes, it does. So much fun.
all right, Jessica DeLoach, Sabin, thanks. Good to talk with you.
Thank you. You
All
too.
right, and you can catch our podcast online at talkbusiness.net, and that is also where you can keep up with all of the latest political headlines each and every day. Thanks for watching.